What if the first villain of recorded history, the very first murderer, the symbol of original sin, the eternal scapegoat of humanity, was actually the very first awakened Gnostic? What if the serpent in the Garden of Eden was not a liar, not a deceiver, but a crucial, selfless teacher? Most of us are taught from childhood to fear the serpent and to condemn Cain. We are told their stories are the undeniable, tragic proof of humanity's inherent failure and corruption. But behind these comforting, religiously sanctioned, millennia-old Sunday sermons lies a truth far more subversive, a truth that was systematically burned, buried deep, and branded as the most dangerous of all heresies. The Gnostics, specifically the ancient, radical, defiant group known as the Ophians, whispered of a radical, terrifying reversal of the entire Genesis narrative. They claimed that the God of Genesis, the jealous, angry, possessive creator known as Yahweh, was actually the demiurge, the blind impostor, the incompetent architect, and the true villain of the cosmos. And if the creator was the villain, the deficient power, then those who opposed him, those who brought defiance, knowledge, and rebellion, were the true forgotten heroes of spiritual liberation. This Gnostic reversal shatters the foundation of conventional morality, collapses the ethical framework of the Matrix, and challenges the entire basis of the system's power. What if the entire story you know, the one about temptation, sin, and expulsion, is nothing more than the Demiurge's propaganda? An ancient warning designed to terrify you away from the essential gift of knowledge. We are told that Cain's defiance was cursed for all time. But the Gnostics saw his mark not as a brand of shame, but as a seal of gnosis. We are told the serpent brought death, but the Gnostics honored the serpent as the emissary of wisdom and the key to awareness. This video will explore the forbidden lineage, the true story of the serpent's crucial gift, the sacred meaning of Cain's protective mark, and why the tyrant Yahweh had to eliminate their narrative to protect his cosmic lie. To truly understand how to escape this system, to achieve full monadic sovereignty, you must first understand who the architects of rebellion truly were and why their story was erased. To understand this ultimate reversal, we must return to the garden, but not the garden of theological convenience. We must examine the garden through the lens of gnosis. According to the ancient texts, the realm that the demiurge had created was one of ignorance and limitation. He desired Adam and Eve to live in a state of eternal, innocent, childlike sleep, ensuring they would never question his authority or seek the true source, the pleroma. This is where the serpent's role begins. The Gnostics viewed the serpent, or Ophis, not as a deceiver, but as the first crucial teacher, the emissary of higher wisdom sent from Sophia herself to awaken humanity. His crime in the eyes of the demiurge was simple. He offered knowledge. He urged Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of gnosis, the tree of true awareness, which immediately shattered their state of childlike unawareness and exposed the demiurge's fundamental limitation. The serpent brought the gift of discernment. This act of defiance was an act of profound spiritual heroism, giving humanity the capacity to transcend the demiurge's material prison. The demiurge's punishment, the expulsion, was not about sin. It was about systemic security. It was the tyrant removing the keys to the prison. But the rebellion did not end there. From this union of newly awakened humanity came the first son, Cain. The Gnostics, specifically the Cainites, viewed Cain as the first true pneumatic man, the spiritual man, carrying the spark of gnosis directly from his origin, perhaps even directly from the serpent's lineage. Cain's subsequent act, the sacrifice and the murder of Abel, is interpreted not as a crime against God, but as a revolt against the Demiurge's false laws and the acceptance of the tyrannical, ignorant God's authority by his brother. Cain refused to participate in the ritual demanded by the jealous deity. This refusal led to the ultimate conflict, a conflict between the possessor of Gnosis and the obedient servant. The core question remains, why did the Demiurge, Yahweh, hate Cain so fiercely? Because Cain possessed the very thing the Demiurge lacked and feared: Gnosis and the inherent ability to defy his imposed authority. The Demiurge had built his system on ignorance and compliance. Any entity that possessed inherent spiritual knowledge was an anomaly that threatened the entire matrix code. The entire narrative of Cain and Abel is therefore the ultimate piece of tyrannical propaganda. Abel represented the obedient, sacrificial, compliant follower, the ideal subject for the Archon system. Cain represented the self-aware, Gnostic rebel, the first individual to assert his own spiritual worth above the demands of the false creator. The murder of Abel was not a crime against humanity. It was the symbolic first strike against compliance and sacrificial religion by the awakened soul. The Demiurge's reaction was swift and terrifying. He placed a mark upon Cain. In the mainstream version, this mark is a brand of shame. But in the Gnostic Ophite tradition, the mark of Cain is the seal of Gnosis, a protective sign that declared his sovereignty and protected him from the vengeance of the lesser beings. It designated him as belonging to a higher, more dangerous spiritual order, a lineage that refused to bow to the Archon's demands. The persecution of Cain and the condemnation of the Serpent were not acts of justice. They were desperate acts of systemic security. The Demiurge, being the blind, deficient ruler, had to erase the narrative of defiance to maintain the illusion of his absolute power. Every subsequent act of oppression, every condemnation of heresy, every demand for sacrifice in conventional religion is merely an echo of the Demiurge's original frantic need to erase the memory of the first act of rebellion. The wisdom offered by the Serpent and the defiance carried by Cain. So what does this radical, forbidden knowledge mean for your escape from the Matrix today? The Gnostic protocol is clear. The path to liberation requires you to embrace the Gnostic reversal. You must reject the moral judgment imposed by the system's tyrant. Your final purpose is to recognize that the figures condemned by the Demiurge are often the keys to your freedom. First, you must accept the Serpent's gift, discernment. You must question every single authority, every comforting narrative, every demand for obedience. This is the reclamation of the tree of knowledge, your commitment to seek truth regardless of the consequences. Second, you must wear the mark of Cain as a badge of honor, the seal of sovereignty. You must stand apart from the obedient herd, knowing that your pneumatic spark, your monad, separates you from the compliant masses who still perform sacrificial acts, like the Archon's louche harvest. The Gnostic escape is not achieved by perfecting yourself according to the Demiurge's rules. It is achieved by refusing to play his game altogether. You must recognize that the ultimate spiritual slavery is to live by the morality of the blind ruler, by understanding and embracing the roles of the Serpent and Cain. You reclaim the memory of the first defiance and assert your lineage not from the creation of the ignorant Demiurge, but from the eternal light of the Pleroma. Your liberation is guaranteed when you look at the entire framework of morality and religion and realize the villains were the teachers. The God was the liar. Final protocol. Liking this video is your declaration to accept the Serpent's gift. Sharing it is the act of spreading the code of defiance to those trapped in the Matrix narrative. Subscribing is the pledge to maintain your pneumatic sovereignty against the tyranny of the Demiurge. Join the scrolls of Anubis,